I've been trying to write this letter of resignation for 3 months now. The state medical examiner's office keeps requesting an official statement for the permanent case files, explaining my departure and addressing the sealed anomalous case from November. They want documentation from everyone involved, and I keep finding reasons to delay. The truth is, I don't know how to explain what I discovered between November 2nd and November 12th without sounding like I've completely lost my grip on reality. But they want an explanation, so here it is. My name is Marcus Webb. I worked as a morgue technician and diner for 18 years, the last 12 of them at the King County Medical Examiner's Office in Seattle, Washington. Before that, I spent 6 years at various hospitals and county morgues throughout the Pacific Northwest. In those 18 years, I've processed over 4,000 bodies. I've performed intake procedures on drowning victims, homicides, suicides, traffic fatalities, and natural deaths. I've assisted in more than 800 autopsies. I've seen bodies in every state of decomposition you can imagine, and I've maintained professional composure through all of it. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand that I'm not someone who panics at the sight of death or imagines things that aren't there. I've spent nearly 2 decades working with the deceased, and I know the difference between post-mortem changes, decomposition artifacts, and genuine anomalies. I've been trained to document, observe, and process death with clinical detachment and scientific precision. I thought I'd seen everything death could show me. I was wrong. The case I'm about to describe is why I submitted my resignation on November 30th. It's why I now work in medical supply logistics, managing inventory databases from an office where I never have to see another deceased person. It's why I sold my house in Seattle and moved to Phoenix, as far from the Pacific Northwest as I could reasonably get while staying in my field. If that sounds like I'm running away, well, you'll understand why by the end of this. It started on November 2nd, a Thursday. I was working the 3 p.m. to midnight shift, which was my usual schedule. We'd had a relatively quiet week, only 7 bodies in our care, all straightforward cases with clear causes of death. Around 6:30 p.m., we received a call from Seattle PD about an incoming body. Single vehicle accident on I-5, male driver, approximately 35 years old, pronounced dead at the scene. The body would arrive within the hour. This kind of call was routine. Traffic fatalities were common, especially in November when the roads get slick with rain and darkness comes early. I prepared the intake station, pulled up the preliminary paperwork that had been emailed ahead, and waited for the transport. The body arrived at 7:15 p.m. 2 transport technicians from the contracted service wheeled in the gurney, and I began my standard intake procedure. I photographed the body, bag-checked the seal integrity, verified the tow tag against the transport documentation, and prepared to transfer the remains to our examination table. That's when I felt the first stirring of recognition. The deceased was male, Caucasian, approximately 35 years old, with dark brown hair and a thin build. He was wearing jeans, a gray Henley shirt, and work boots. His injuries were consistent with a high-speed vehicle collision, significant thoracic trauma, probable aortic dissection, multiple rib fractures. The steering wheel had likely crushed his chest on impact, but it was his face that stopped me, even accounting for the trauma and the pallor of death, even with the subtle changes that occur in the hours after someone dies. I knew I had seen this man before. Not just seen him, I had processed his body before. I stood there staring at the deceased's face for a long moment, my gloved hands hovering over the intake clipboard. This wasn't possible. In 18 years of morgue work, I'd never had the same person come through twice. That's not how death works. You only die once. I shook off the feeling and told myself I was mistaken. Faces can look similar. Trauma can distort features. The human brain is pattern-seeking and sometimes finds connections that aren't really there. I continued with the intake procedure, photographing injuries, collecting personal effects, and completing the documentation. The preliminary identification listed him as David Chen, age 34, Seattle resident. His wallet had been recovered from the vehicle with a Washington state driver's license showing a Capitol Hill address. Everything seemed straightforward, but I couldn't shake the nagging certainty that I knew this face. After completing the intake, I did something I'd never done before in my entire career. I went to our digital archive and started searching through old case files, looking for a face I couldn't quite place in my memory. Our morgue had digitized all records going back to 2008, which covered most of my tenure at King County. I started searching by physical characteristics. Male, Caucasian, 30-40 years old, brown hair, thin build, approximately 5'10". The system returned 247 matches. I spent the next 2 hours scrolling through case photographs, looking for the face I'd just seen on my examination table. The morgue was quiet except for the hum of refrigeration units and the occasional settling sounds of the building. Outside, rain hammered against the windows, typical Seattle November weather. I was alone in the facility, which wasn't unusual for evening shifts. Most of the administrative staff had gone home hours ago, and the medical examiners only came in when called for active cases. The isolation usually didn't bother me. I'd grown comfortable with the solitude of morgue work, the peaceful silence of working with the deceased. But that night, as I scrolled through hundreds of photographs of dead faces, I felt an increasing sense of unease that I couldn't quite explain. It was past 9 p.m. when I found it, and I actually felt my heart rate spike, an unusual physiological response for someone who'd spent 18 years maintaining clinical detachment from death. November 2nd, 2017. Exactly 6 years earlier, to the day. The deceased in that case had been identified as Michael Torres, age 34, Portland resident. Traffic fatality, single vehicle accident on I-5. The injuries were nearly identical: thoracic trauma, probable aortic dissection, multiple rib fractures. Same cause of death, same mechanism of injury, same presentation. I pulled up the full case file and reviewed every detail of the 2017 intake. I'd been working at King County for 6 years by that point, but I didn't remember processing this particular case. I checked the intake signature. It had been handled by Tom Richardson, a senior technician who'd retired in 2019. But the photographs were clear and well documented, showing every aspect of the deceased from multiple angles. But more importantly, it was the same face. I pulled up both sets of photographs on split screens and compared them directly. I'm not talking about similar features or a family resemblance. I'm talking about identical faces, same bone structure, same facial proportions, same slight scar above the left eyebrow, same distinctive shape to the ears. The only differences were the clothing and the names on the driver's licenses. I sat back in my chair and stared at the screens. This didn't make sense. Bodies don't look this similar unless they're identical twins, and even then, there are usually subtle differences. These faces were perfect matches, down to small details that twins wouldn't necessarily share. I checked the dates again, November 2nd, 2017 and November 2nd, 2023. Both traffic fatalities on I-5. Both single vehicle accidents with no other vehicles involved. Both with the same catastrophic thoracic injuries. I printed out both sets of intake photographs and walked over to Dr. Patricia Kenji's office. Dr. Kenji was our chief medical examiner, a forensic pathologist with 25 years of experience who had performed over 5,000 autopsies. If anyone could make sense of this, it would be her. She was still in her office despite the late hour, working through a backlog of case files that had accumulated during a particularly busy October. The light from her desk lamp cast long shadows across the hallway as I approached. "Marcus, what's wrong?" she asked immediately upon seeing my face. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I think I might have," I said, and spread the photographs across her desk. Dr. Kenji studied them for several minutes, switching her attention between the two sets of images. She pulled out a magnifying glass and examined specific details: the scar, the ear shape, the exact positioning of facial features. "These are the same person," she said finally. "The facial architecture is identical. Not similar, identical. But the identification information is different." "Same day, 6 years apart," I said. "November 2nd, same type of accident, same location, same injuries." Dr. Kenji looked up at me. "That's not possible. Are you suggesting we processed the same body twice, 6 years apart?" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just showing you what I found." She picked up her phone and called down to the morgue. "I need you to prepare the body from tonight's intake for immediate examination. I'm coming down. We spent the next hour conducting a detailed physical examination of David Chen's body. Dr. Kenji was meticulous, photographing every detail, measuring facial features, documenting the scar tissue, examining dental characteristics, and reviewing the specific pattern of injuries. Then she went to our archived evidence storage and retrieved the file from Michael Torres from 2017. That case had been closed years ago, but we maintained physical evidence for 7 years as standard protocol. The file contained fingerprint, cards, dental x-rays, and tissue samples that had been taken during the original autopsy. For older cases beyond the 7-year retention period, physical evidence had been disposed of, but we maintained permanent archives of microscope slides with preserved tissue samples and digitally scanned copies of all fingerprint cards and dental x-rays. "I want to run a comparison," Dr. Kenji said. "Fingerprints first, then dental records, if we need to go further." I took fresh fingerprints from David Chen's body using our standard 10-print card method, this time with meticulous attention to detail for comparison purposes. During initial intake, I'd taken basic fingerprints for identification, but these needed to be perfect for forensic comparison. The process was routine. I'd done it thousands of times. I carefully rolled each finger on the ink pad and then onto the designated spaces on the card, ensuring clear impressions of all 10 digits plus the simultaneous impressions of all 4 fingers on each hand. The quality of the prints was excellent. Post-mortem fingerprinting can be challenging if the body has been in water or if decomposition has started, but this body was fresh enough that the ridge detail was crisp and clear. Dr. Kenji pulled out the fingerprint card from Michael Torres's file, handling it carefully with gloved hands. The 2017 card had aged slightly, the paper showing minor discoloration at the edges, but the ink impressions remained sharp and legible. We placed them side by side under the examination lights, using magnifying glasses to study the ridge patterns in detail. The match was immediately apparent, even before we did a formal point-by-point comparison. The whorl patterns, ridge counts, and distinctive characteristics were identical. I pointed out specific features: a bifurcation in the right index finger, an unusual ridge ending in the left thumb, a distinctive pattern of ridges in the right ring finger that formed an almost perfect triangle. "That's impossible," Dr. Kenji said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Fingerprints are unique to each individual. The formation of ridge patterns occurs during fetal development and is influenced by genetic factors, environmental conditions in the womb, and random developmental variations. Even identical twins have different fingerprints. They don't repeat, not even in identical twins. The statistical probability of 2 people having the same fingerprints is essentially 0. "But they match," I said, hearing the slight tremor in my own voice that I'd never experienced in 18 years of morgue work. "They match," she confirmed. She looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on her face before, genuine uncertainty. "Marcus, I need you to search the archives more thoroughly. If this body came through once before 6 years ago, I want to know if there are any other instances." I went back to my computer and expanded my search parameters, going back beyond our digital records to the paper files that had been scanned and stored in our basement archive. I searched by physical characteristics, by date patterns, by injury types, by anything that might reveal a connection. What I found made my hands start shaking. November the 2nd, 2011. 12 years ago, traffic fatality on I-5, male victim, age 34, listed as James Patterson, Tacoma resident. I pulled the scanned case photos from the archive. Same face, same injuries, same fingerprints, according to the archive 10-print card. I kept searching. November the 2nd, 2005, 18 years ago. Before I'd started at King County, but the case had been processed at a Portland morgue, where I'd worked briefly during my early career in 2004. I had left that position in early 2005 to take a better-paying job at a hospital morgue in Tacoma, which is why I hadn't been there to process this particular case. Traffic fatality on I-5, male victim, age 34, listed as Robert Carlson. I called the Portland Medical Examiner's office and requested they pull the archived file. They faxed over the intake photographs and fingerprint records within an hour. Same face, same injuries, same fingerprints. By 2 a.m., I documented 5 cases spanning 24 years. Every 6 years on November 2nd, a man with the same face, the same fingerprints, and the same injuries died in a single vehicle traffic accident on Interstate 5. Each time, he had a different name, a different address, and a different identity. Each time, he was listed as 34 years old. Dr. Kenji came back down to the morgue at 2:30 a.m. after I called her with my findings. I had printed out all 5 cases and arranged them chronologically on the examination table: 1999, 2005, 2011, 2017, and 2023. The earliest case, from 1999, predated digital photography, but I'd found the Polaroid intake photos in the archived paper files. "This is the same person," Dr. Kenji said, examining each set of photographs. "The same individual, dying repeatedly across 24 years, always on November 2nd, always at age 34, always from the same type of traffic accident." "How is that possible?" I asked. "It's not possible. There is no medical, scientific, or logical explanation for a person dying multiple times. Death is a terminal state. Once cellular death occurs and decomposition begins, that individual is permanently deceased. They don't come back and die again 6 years later." "But the evidence is irrefutable," she interrupted. "These fingerprints are identical across 5 separate cases spanning 24 years. Fingerprints don't lie, Marcus. They're one of the most reliable forms of identification we have. If these prints match, these bodies are the same person." She pulled out her phone and started making calls. Over the next 48 hours, she assembled a team of experts, 3 additional forensic pathologists, 2 fingerprint examiners from the Seattle Police Department, and Dr. Sarah Chen, a forensic anthropologist from the University of Washington. Over the following 3 days, November 3rd through 5th, they conducted the most thorough examination I'd ever witnessed. They compared fingerprints, dental records, skeletal measurements, DNA samples from archived tissue slides, and every other identifying characteristic available across all 5 cases. Every test confirmed the same impossible conclusion. All 5 bodies were the same individual. The DNA analysis came back on November 5th. Dr. Richard Patel, our forensic geneticist, delivered the results in person, and I could see he was badly shaken. "The DNA from all 5 tissue samples is identical," he said. "Not similar, not close. Identical. We ran the analysis 3 times to verify. These samples all came from the same person, with the same genetic profile. The probability of this occurring by chance is less than 1 in 10^20. It's statistically impossible." "But here it is," Dr. Kenji said. 5 bodies, 5 different dates, 5 different identities, but one person, one genetic individual dying repeatedly." Dr. Sarah Chen, the forensic anthropologist, had been examining the skeletal structure visible in the archived X-rays and CT scans from the more recent cases. "The skeletal architecture is identical across all cases," she confirmed. "Same bone density, same healed fracture patterns in the left radius, which appeared in the 1999 case and shows up consistently in every subsequent case. Same minor congenital variations in the thoracic vertebrae. These are markers that are unique to an individual and don't change across their lifetime." One of the fingerprint examiners, Detective Mark Sullivan from SPD, had been conducting his own analysis. "I've been doing fingerprint identification for 22 years, he said. "I've compared thousands of prints, testified in dozens of trials. These 6 sets of prints are from the same individual. There is zero doubt. I've verified 27 points of minutia that match exactly across all 6 cases. In court, we only need 12 points for positive identification. This is as certain as fingerprint science gets." Detective Sullivan had also begun investigating the identities themselves. "Each driver's license was genuine," he reported during our November 6th meeting. "I've verified them through state databases. Each identity had documented employment history, rental agreements, tax records. But here's what's strange. The paper trail for each identity only goes back about 4 years before the death. Before that, nothing. It's as if each person materialized out of nowhere, lived for 4 years, then died on November 2nd. "And no families?" Dr. Kenji asked. "None," Sullivan confirmed. "Not one family member came forward to claim any of these bodies. Each was eventually cremated after the standard holding period. It's as if these identities existed solely to die. Dr. Kenji had also been reviewing the autopsy reports from all 6 cases. The internal injuries are identical, she noted, spreading the reports across the conference table. Same pattern of rib fractures, 3rd through 7th ribs on the left side, same aortic dissection location, just distal to the left subclavian artery, same liver laceration positioning, segments 6 and 7. The injuries aren't just similar, they're exact duplicates, as if the same trauma happened to the same body 6 different times. We held an emergency meeting in Dr. Kenji's office on November 6th. 7 professionals were present, 3 pathologists, 2 fingerprint experts, 1 forensic anthropologist, and me. The evidence was laid out across the conference table. Photographs, fingerprint cards, DNA analysis reports, dental records, and x-rays spanning 24 years. We need to discuss what we do with this information, Dr. Kenji said. We have 6 cases of the same individual dying repeatedly. Every scientific test confirms this impossibility. The question is, what do we report? We can't report this, Dr. Patel said immediately. If we publish findings stating that a person died 6 times over 24 years, we'll be laughed out of the medical community. Our professional reputations will be destroyed. But we have the evidence, I said. We've documented everything, verified everything. This isn't speculation or theory. This is reproducible scientific data. Scientific data that violates the fundamental laws of biology, Dr. Sarachen replied. Death is irreversible. Cellular death, tissue death, organ death. These are terminal processes. You can't die, decompose, and then exist again as a living person who can die again. It's medically impossible. Detective Sullivan leaned forward. I need to approach this from a law enforcement angle. If these are all the same person, we're potentially looking at identity fraud on a massive scale. 5 different driver's licenses, 5 different addresses, 5 different identities. That's a criminal investigation. But how does someone fake their own death 5 times? I asked. We didn't just process paperwork. We processed bodies. Real bodies with real injuries that caused real death. I've personally prepared 2 of these bodies for release to funeral homes, conducting full post-mortem examinations. They were dead, completely and irreversibly dead, with all the expected physiological signs of death: rigor mortis, livor mortis, algor mortis. There was no possibility of suspended animation or fake death. The room fell silent. No one had an answer. Dr. Kenji finally spoke. I think we need to approach this systematically. First, we need to determine if there is a 6th case. If this pattern holds, there should be a death on November 2nd, 1993, 30 years ago. That would predate our digital records and might be archived elsewhere. I spent November 7th and 8th contacting morgues throughout Oregon and Washington, searching for any traffic fatality on November 2nd, 1993, involving a male victim around age 34. I expanded my search beyond I-5 to include other major interstate highways, in case the pattern wasn't strictly limited to that route. On the afternoon of November 8th, I finally found it. The Spokane County Medical Examiner's Office had processed a body on November 2nd, 1993. Traffic fatality, single vehicle accident on I-90 near Spokane. Not I-5, but the same general pattern. Male victim listed as Thomas Bradley, age 34. They still had the paper file in their archives. Given the urgency, they agreed to overnight courier the original file to us rather than just faxing copies. The file arrived on the morning of November 9th. I opened it in Dr. Kenji's presence, my hands trembling slightly despite 18 years of professional composure. I already knew what we would find. Same face in the intake photographs, same injuries, same fingerprints on the archived 10-print card. 6 deaths, 6 instances of the same person dying, always at age 34, always on November 2nd, across 30 years. This establishes a clear pattern, Dr. Kenji said, her voice barely above a whisper. Every 6 years, on November 2nd. If the pattern continues, there should be a 7th death on November 2nd, 2029. That thought sent a chill down my spine. The idea that this would happen again, that 6 years from now, someone would process another body with the same face, the same fingerprints, the same impossible identity. It was too much. But I needed to know if the pattern extended even further back. If the 6-year cycle held, there should be a case from November 2nd, 1987, 36 years ago. I spent the next 2 days contacting every major medical examiner's office in the Pacific Northwest, searching archives from Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and even British Columbia. I found nothing. No traffic fatality matching the profile from November 2nd, 1987. Either that case had occurred somewhere outside my search area, the records had been lost or destroyed, or the pattern simply didn't extend back that far. Perhaps 1993 was the beginning, though that seemed arbitrary. Or perhaps there were cases I couldn't find, lost to time and inadequate record keeping from the pre-digital era. We need to make a decision, Dr. Kenji said during our final meeting on November 12th. Do we report this formally, or do we document it internally and move on? I can't move on, I said. I've been working with the dead for 18 years, and the fundamental assumption of my entire career is that death is final. Dead people stay dead. They don't come back to die again and again. If that assumption is wrong, then what else is wrong? What else about death don't we understand? Dr. Patel shook his head. I've run the DNA analysis 3 times. The science is clear. These bodies are genetically identical, but the implication that a person can die, decompose, cease to exist, and then exist again years later to die once more, violates everything we know about biology, physics, and the nature of existence itself. Over the next week, the team continued their analysis, looking for any explanation that would make sense of what we'd found. They considered every possibility, identical twins or multiple siblings, ruled out by DNA analysis showing identical genetic profiles, not just sibling relationships. Cloning, theoretically possible for genetic identity, but couldn't explain the consistent age of 34 across 30 years mistaken identity, ruled out by fingerprint matches, which are absolutely unique to individuals. Evidence contamination, ruled out by the fact that the cases were processed by different facilities at different times with different personnel. Coordinated fraud, impossible to explain how someone could fake death, pass autopsy examination, and fool forensic analysis repeatedly. No conventional explanation fit the evidence. On November 15th, Dr. Kenji made the decision. We're going to document this internally as an anomalous case series. We'll maintain all the evidence and analysis in a sealed file, but we're not going to publish or report it externally. The implications are too far-reaching, and we have no way to explain what we've found within the current framework of medical and forensic science. The other professionals agreed, though I could see the decision troubled them. They were scientists who had dedicated their careers to discovering and reporting truth, and now they were being asked to bury the most extraordinary finding any of them had ever encountered. I couldn't accept that decision, not because I thought we should publish. I understood the professional consequences that would follow, but because I couldn't continue working in a morgue, knowing that death might not be what I'd always believed it to be. I submitted my resignation on November 30th, 3 weeks after we closed the investigation. In my resignation letter, I cited personal reasons and a desire to pursue different opportunities. The truth was that I couldn't continue processing bodies when I'd lost faith in the fundamental nature of death itself. Dr. Kenji called me into her office before my last day. Marcus, I understand why you're leaving. This case has shaken all of us, but I need to know, are you going to talk about this? Are you going to go public with what we found? No, I said. Who would believe me? Without access to the evidence, without the ability to verify the fingerprints and DNA, I'd just be a former morgue technician with an unbelievable story. I'd destroy any chance of working in the medical field again. Good, she said, though she looked sad rather than relieved. Because this case, whatever it represents, is beyond our ability to understand or explain. Maybe someday medical science will advance to the point where this makes sense, but right now, all we can do is document it and move on. But I couldn't move on. Not really. I moved to Phoenix in January and took a job with a medical supply company, managing inventory databases and logistics. I work with supplies now, not bodies. I deal with living doctors and nurses, not the deceased. I haven't set foot in a morgue since my last day in Seattle, but I think about that case every single day. I think about the 7 bodies with the same face, the same fingerprints, the same DNA, dying repeatedly across 30 years. I think about what it means for our understanding of death, identity, and existence. Most of all, I think about November 2nd, 2029. 6 years from now, if the pattern holds, someone will die in a traffic accident on Interstate 5. They'll be approximately 34 years old, male, with brown hair, and a thin build. They'll die from thoracic trauma, probable aortic dissection, multiple rib fractures, and whoever processes that body will have the same experience I did. The nagging recognition, the impossible realization, the discovery that challenges everything they thought they knew about death. I wonder if they'll search the archives like I did. I wonder if they'll find the documentation we left behind. I wonder if they'll make the same impossible discovery and face the same choice. Report it and destroy their credibility, or bury it and live with the knowledge that death might not be final after all. The case files are sealed in the King County Medical Examiner's archive, accessible only to senior staff with proper authorization. The evidence is there: photographs, fingerprints, DNA analysis, dental records, everything needed to verify the impossible pattern. But no one is actively investigating it, and no official report was ever filed. I'm writing this statement not as an official document, but as a personal record of what I witnessed and verified during those 10 days in November. I don't expect anyone to believe me without access to the evidence. I don't expect this to change anything about how we understand death or investigate traffic fatalities. But I need to document what I found, because I can't carry this knowledge alone any longer. For 18 years, I thought I understood death. I thought I understood the clear boundary between living and deceased. I thought that when someone died, they stayed dead. And that certainty was the foundation of everything I did professionally. The case of the recurring body, the man who died 6 times across 30 years, destroyed that certainty. It showed me that death might be more complex, more mysterious, and more cyclical than anything modern science acknowledges or understands. I'm no longer a morgue technician because I can't work with the dead when I don't understand what death actually is. I can't perform intake procedures, assist in autopsies, or maintain professional detachment when I know that somewhere in my records might be another impossible pattern waiting to be discovered. The medical examiner's office accepted my resignation and wished me well in my new career. Dr. Kenji wrote me an excellent reference letter that praised my technical skills, attention to detail, and 18 years of professional service. She made no mention of the case that ended my career, and I didn't expect her to. Sometimes I wonder about the other morgue workers who processed those earlier cases, the technicians who handled the 1993 body in Spokane, the 1999 case in Portland, the 2005 case. Did any of them notice the pattern? Did any of them search the archives and find the same impossible evidence I found? Or did they process the bodies, complete the paperwork, and move on without ever realizing they were handling the same person who had died before and would die again? I wonder if there are other cases like this out there, other impossible patterns hidden in morgue archives across the country, waiting for someone with enough curiosity or pattern recognition to connect the dots. How many times can someone die? Is 6 the current count, or does it continue indefinitely? And what happens to a person's consciousness, their identity, their essence during those 6-year gaps between deaths? These are questions I can't answer. These are mysteries that extend beyond forensic science into philosophy, metaphysics, and areas of inquiry that have nothing to do with the technical work of processing bodies and determining cause of death. But I know what I saw. I know what I documented. I know what 8 independent forensic professionals verified through rigorous scientific analysis. One person dying repeatedly across 30 years, always at the same age, always on the same day, always from the same type of injury. The evidence exists. The documentation is sealed but preserved. And 6 years from now, if the pattern continues, there will be a 7th body with the same face, the same fingerprints, and the same impossible identity. I won't be there to process it. I won't be there to verify it. I won't be there to continue the investigation that I started but can never finish. But someone will be there. Some morgue technician will perform the intake, take the photographs, collect the fingerprints, and complete the documentation. And if they're curious enough, if they're thorough enough, if they're willing to search the archives and connect the patterns, they'll discover what I discovered. They'll find the evidence that death isn't always final. They'll learn that some people, for reasons we can't explain or understand, die repeatedly, returning somehow to die again and again across decades. And then they'll face the same choice I faced: document the impossible and risk their career, or bury the discovery and try to move on with the knowledge that everything they thought they knew about death was incomplete. I chose to leave. I chose to walk away from 18 years of professional experience because I couldn't reconcile what I'd learned with the certainty required to continue the work. Maybe that makes me weak. Maybe a stronger person would have stayed, would have continued investigating, would have fought to bring this discovery into the light regardless of professional consequences. But I'm not that person. I'm just a former morgue technician who found something impossible, verified it with every scientific tool available, and then walked away because the implications were too vast to process. This is my statement of what happened during those 10 days in November when I discovered the body that kept dying. This is my account of the case that ended my career and changed my understanding of death forever. The evidence is there, sealed and preserved in the King County Medical Examiner's archives. The pattern will continue. November 2nd, 2029, then 2035, then 2041, extending forward into a future where the same person will die again and again, always at age 34, always from the same trauma. I won't be there to witness it, but someone will be, and maybe they'll be brave enough to do what I couldn't, bring this impossible truth into the light and force medical science to confront the mystery of the body that keeps dying. Until then, I'll work with medical supplies in Phoenix, managing databases and inventory, never touching another deceased person, and trying not to think about the pattern that continues 6 years at a time, death after death, impossibly, endlessly, beyond all explanation or understanding.